Welcome back to the Defrilex podcast.
Great to be back.
So, if you're looking for the shortest route to being the most informed person in the room on operational complexity, you are definitely in the right place.
We really do try to boil it down.
We do. We take this complex source material and distill it into, actionable knowledge you can use immediately.
And before we jump in...
Oh, right. Yeah. While you're settling in, please do us a quick favor and hit that subscribe button. It just takes a second.
It really helps.
It does. That way, you won't miss anything when we post new deep dives and sound bites.
So we've spent a good amount of time recently talking about the power of predictable operational workflows.
Right. Why that structure isn't just a nice to have, but it's essential.
Absolutely essential for cutting down delays and, maybe more importantly, for building that operational trust.
Exactly. We've covered why a reliable system is really the foundation of being able to scale. But today, we're pivoting.
A hard pivot.
Yeah, a hard pivot. We're moving past what works to something I think is even more urgent. We're going to analyze what actually breaks first when those multilingual workflows don't have that structure.
And this is so timely with high-pressure periods like the Q1 crunch always looming.
It is. Our mission today is to give you a shortcut, really, to fixing the whole system by precisely defining where it fails.
And that distinction is just so key, because when that operational pressure hits, all those little structural weaknesses, the ones that were just minor annoyances before.
Yeah, the things you ignore.
They suddenly expand into these catastrophic bottlenecks. They can slow the entire organization down.
Okay, so let's jump right in with the great misconception, because this is where I think leaders often look in completely the wrong direction. When multilingual operations start to seize up, when they slow down, what is the first thing that leadership usually questions or blames?
Almost without fail, it's the interpretation service itself.
This visible part.
The most visible part. They look at the quality, the availability, maybe the accuracy of the conversation. It's the language-dependent component, so it becomes this easy initial focus for blame.
That makes sense. It's the default assumption, right? If the client meeting or the compliance review with two languages went sideways, well, the problem must have been the language barrier.
Or the person managing that barrier.
Exactly. But if you look at the source material, the real-world data, is that assumption actually accurate in practice?
And what's so fascinating here is that, no, the problem rarely starts with the interpreter, or even the accuracy of the conversation.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, we often see that the conversation itself, the translation, is perfect. The words are right, the meaning is conveyed, but the action that's supposed to happen next, it still fails. And that's what causes the delay.
That is a powerful and honestly a surprising distinction. So if the conversation is flawless, why do leaders still rush to blame the language component first? It seems logical to look where the language exchange actually happened.
It's logical, but it misunderstands the true point of the structural failure. The breakdown happens around the interpreter, not through them.
Okay, explain that. Around them.
Think of it this way. The interpreter is a perfect communications conduit. They did their job, they delivered the message accurately, but the system that's built around that conduit is faulty.
I see.
I mean, you can have a flawlessly accurate 2-hour conversation, but if the workflow that surrounds that interaction is not predictable, the clock just starts ticking immediately. Delays begin to compound. The accuracy becomes, well, almost irrelevant.
So the immediate action after the translation is the true point of fragility. Okay, let's unpack this. If it's not the interpretation, what are the specific points of failure? Where are the real workflow fracture points?
We've identified 4 specific areas, and what's key is that they are all process definition problems, not language problems.
These are the structural flaws that high volume brings to the surface.
Precisely.
Okay, give us the first failure point. What does it look like in the real world?
Number 1 is task ownership. After a multilingual interaction, say a complicated client intake, there are often follow-up tasks, just waiting, without a clear designated owner.
So it's just sitting in a queue somewhere. Exactly.
The rep who just finished the call knows something needs to happen, but the system doesn't automatically assign the next step. The task just sits there, the real-world consequence. This is why your high-priority case sits idle for 48 hours.
Because it depends on a supervisor manually reviewing a queue, which is the first thing to get skipped when things get busy.
That's it, which means the system is instantly non-scalable. It works for 5 cases a day, but it just collapses at 50.
Wow. Okay, so what's the second area of breakdown?
Second is the follow-up delay. So even if an owner is designated, the required follow-ups, a 7-day check-in or a 24-hour form request, They get delayed or missed completely.
Why? Is it just people forgetting?
It's because the system relies on human memory, or scattered notes, calendar reminders. It's not automated. The energy of that initial conversation just dissipates, and that next step lags.
So let's go back to your relay race analogy, which I like.
Okay.
When the runner drops the baton, is that usually a training issue, or is it a structural issue with the handoff zone itself?
It is entirely structural. It's not that the runner wants to drop the baton. It's that the rules defining where and when the next person is supposed to be standing are vague.
I see.
That is the essence of follow-up delay. The ball gets dropped right after the accurate translation because the next step wasn't automatically mandated by the system.
That brings us to point 3, which I imagine is a huge headache. Documentation flow.
This is huge. And it's the source of major legal and compliance risk. Documentation flow breaks down when the paperwork doesn't move seamlessly with the case file across all the steps.
What do you mean, like it's in different places?
Exactly. You might have interpreter notes in one portal, case manager notes in Salesforce, and a signed form scanned into SharePoint. These pieces travel separately, they live in different systems.
And they don't talk to each other.
Or worse, they don't update automatically.
When you say compliance headache, what does that really cost an organization? Are we talking about a lost document or something bigger?
We're talking about real fines and, more commonly, just massive rework. If those documents aren't digitally attached to the core case, you lose the continuity. You lose the context.
And when an audit happens,
when legal or compliance needs to audit, they can't recreate the timeline. We see teams spending days, literally days, backtracking to find a key form that was filed under the wrong date or language tag. That time is just pure structural waste.
And the fourth point, it sounds like it involves silos.
It does. The fourth point is interdepartmental handoffs. Language-specific updates or critical context, they just fall between the cracks when a case gets transferred.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Intake might handle the initial contact in Spanish, right? They capture all this nuanced customer need. But when the case transfers to, say, finance, that context, the specific thing they talked about, is stripped away.
So the next department just sees a basic English summary.
Exactly. Which leads to confusion, rework, and the client having to repeat their story all over again, which is a terrible experience.
So if the system relies on the intake agent remembering to call the finance analyst to explain the context of a Spanish conversation, that workflow is just fundamentally broken.
It's broken the moment the phone starts ringing constantly. The case file itself doesn't carry the full language context reliably across departments.
Okay, so now we know the 4 structural defects. Let's connect the dots to that high-pressure period. Q1. Why is Q1 failure so specific to these multilingual workflow issues?
The Q1 is like a perfect crucible for workflow failure. It doesn't just bring volume, it brings a complexity multiplier. We see 3 unique pressures all colliding at once.
That's complexity multiplier. Tell us about that mix.
First, you have the sudden, massive return of demand right after the holidays. Volume just spikes.
Overnight.
Second, new enrollment and application cycles often begin. That means a huge influx of brand new cases, new clients who need detailed attention, often across multiple languages for the first time.
Okay, and the third pressure.
Compliance oversight increases dramatically. Expectations reset for the new year, and organizations start Q1 under a microscope.
Meaning those documentation errors we just talked about are suddenly very high risk.
Extremely high risk.
So you have a massive increase in complex first-time volume hitting a system that has 0 margin for error due to that heightened compliance.
Precisely. This is where the latent structural flaws become critical. If task ownership relies on manual follow-up, the system must slow down under this pressure. It's like a law of operational physics.
And the teams are still working hard.
Incredibly hard. They're putting in longer hours, but the internal structure simply cannot absorb the variation or the volume of those complex cases.
That explains why leaders feel like they're running faster but achieving less during those peak times. The effort is there, but the structure is the bottleneck.
It's a tragedy, really. Dedicated effort being defeated by structural flaws. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's all about scalability. A system that can handle 10 complex cases a week will instantly collapse at 100.
Not because the interpreters vanished,
but because the structure around them was designed for a quiet period, not for peak performance. The delay just compounds geometrically.
Okay, let's shift the focus. Let's talk about the solution. Predictability. It sounds like it's more than just efficiency. It's a form of operational defense. How do predictable workflows act as safeguards?
They ensure continuity, period. When conditions change, when volume spikes, a predictable workflow has already hardwired the answers to those 4 fracture points we discussed.
So you're removing the reliance on human memory?
You're removing the dangerous reliance on memory and good intentions, and you're replacing it with defined automatic routing and mandated documentation flows.
The system anticipates the need and defines the consequences of each step.
That's the benefit of clarity. When tasks are routed clearly, ownership is defined, documentation moves consistently, the results are immediate. They're measurable.
Follow-ups happen on time.
Because they're triggered automatically. Compliance risk is dramatically reduced because the paper trail is secure and consistent.
And I have to imagine the internal friction, all those emails and messages asking, whose desk is this on? Or did we ever get that document? That must just plummet.
Absolutely. Think about the cost of rework. Predictability eliminates a huge percentage of that internal chatter. Rework decreases because the team isn't backtracking to find lost information. It's the difference between scaling up seamlessly and grinding to a painful, effort-filled halt.
This is the actionable insight our listeners need. Let's give them a final diagnostic tool. If someone's listening and they want to give their workflow a checkup, what are the 4 key questions they should be asking?
Okay, so you need to assume the interpretation is flawless. The critical question is whether the workflow around it can unequivocally answer these 4 questions with structural clarity, not just good intentions.
Okay, give us the lose one last time.
Number 1, who owns the next step? Is that ownership defined and assigned before the initial interaction is even considered complete? That's clear accountability.
Number 2.
Number 2, where does documentation go immediately after the interaction? Does it automatically attach to the core case file? Or does it wait for manual processing? That's secure flow.
Makes sense. Number 3.
Number 3, how does language travel consistently across different departments? When the case moves from intake to finance, does the full translated context move with it? That's continuity of information.
And the final.
And number 4, what happens immediately after the multilingual call ends? What is the automatic system-generated trigger that kicks off the next step, eliminating that reliance on human memory?
And those 4 answers.
Those 4 answers determine whether your multilingual support is truly an accelerator of your business or if it becomes an engine of operational delay when the pressure inevitably hits. If you can't answer those 4 with clarity, you're just relying on luck.
That's a powerful framework. So let's wrap this deep dive up. The core lesson here seems simple. Predictability isn't about control, it's about clarity.
That's it.
In these complex multilingual environments, clarity is the only thing that prevents those small structural failures from escalating into major operational delays.
When the pressure is on, clarity is everything.
So for everyone listening, as you look at your own organization, think about a specific, complex, multilingual interaction you were involved in this past year.
A real one.
A real one. And ask yourself, could you clearly answer those 4 diagnostic questions for every single step of that process? Ownership, documentation, context transfer, and triggers. If not, you know exactly where your most urgent safeguards need to be built.
That's the starting point.
Thank you so much for tuning into this deep dive on the Defrilex podcast. We're committed to making sure you have the insights you need to build robust, predictable systems.
And if you found this useful,
please remember to subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss the next session that helps you get well informed, fast. We'll catch you next time.